Very good afternoon. Welcome to our session on crafting compelling value proposition within business process management industry. The session will explore how do you articulate the unique values your BPM solution bring to the table, focusing on driving meaningful impact. We will discuss how to align your proposition with your customer's pain point, highlight some of the key differentiators, and showcase the measurable outcome your business process management can deliver. By the end of this session, you will be equipped to create a powerful value proposition that resonates with your audience, sets you apart from competitors, and accelerate the decision making in your favor. Before we start, I would request all the participants to please share your questions over the chat. And now I would like to introduce my panelists who come from diverse background, not only background, but diverse geographies. One of them is based out of Manila, other is joining us from US, and then one of them is from India. So different perspectives from different geographies, different line of functions, businesses. So this is going to be a very, very interesting discussion. So let me welcome Ashish Chaturvedi, Senior Vice President Operations. Ashish heads service delivery at HGS India and Philippines. He has over 27 years of work experience, of which 23 plus years in outsourcing and offshoring across multiple geographies, channels, clients, and domains. He has an extensive experience in managing operations in India, Philippines, across insurance, healthcare, financial services, travel, hospitality, etc. Ashish started his career with hotel industry in mid-90s, switched to BPM. After 5 years, he worked for leading companies such as Dell, America, Online, and many others before joining HGS in 2014. It's my pleasure to welcome Ashish for this discussion.
Thank you, Amita. And I look forward to an engaging session today.
Thank you. We look forward for the same. Next, I have Mohan Natrajan joining us. He serves as Senior Vice President of Business Transformation at Sagility, where he spearheads the global business transformation, automation, and analytics team. With over 20 years of industry experiences in BPM, Ram has led initiatives in areas such as solution design and transitions, operations, pre-sales, transformation, service quality, and resource management. Ram's strategic approach has been pivotal in positioning Sagility as a leader in the industry. He holds a Bachelor of Engineering honors degree from BITS Pilani and a postgraduate degree in management from IIM Bangalore. Additionally, he's a certified project manager as well. Under Ram's leadership, Sagility continues to drive business transformation, setting new benchmarks, and delivering results for stakeholders. Welcome, Ram. It's a pleasure to have you on board.
Thanks, Amita. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you. Now we have Prashant Kandukuri, Vice President, GTM and Digital Transformation at Alorica. With a dynamic career in BPO industry, Prashant excels in operation, business development, strategy, and digital transformation. He strives to be a trusted advisor, guiding clients to their unique goal through customized outsourcing propositions. I welcome Prashant for these discussions.
Thank you, Amita, and hi, everybody. Looking forward to this conversation.
Perfect. So without further ado, let's start our discussion. And I would like to know from each one of you, what are the key components of an effective value proposition in your industry? How can organizations identify and articulate the unique value proposition for your customers? An interesting perspective from each one of you would help.
Amita, you want me to go first?
Any one of you can go.
Sure. So it's a great question for the starters, I would say, right? I think our outsourcing industry has truly evolved in the last couple of decades. And what used to be a vanilla offering, say 20 years or 15 years back, has truly evolved into multiple stages of evolution that we have witnessed over the years. Of course, a lot of it is driven by technology-enabled processes. But there is one thing which is essential when we talk about value proposition. It's beyond the contract. And as simple, simply put, in an engagement where there is a client and a partner relationship, there are certain things that are obligated via a contract or a scope of work that gets signed. And that's the way, many organizations approach it as that's what we have to deliver. But the differentiation comes in when an organization looks beyond what is on paper, looks beyond what's contractually obligation that a partner must deliver. And that's where the strength of an organization comes in. When we talk about value proposition, a lot of companies don't even actually look at what they are expected to deliver because they know they have to deliver that. In my introduction, you talked about my background with the hotel industry. So let me make use of an analogy from the hotel industry itself. I'm sure all the participants here and the panelists at some stage, you would have checked in a hotel and you would have checked in a variety of different hotels. Every hotel where you make booking is expected to give you a room key at the time of check-in. But the real value proposition is when few things get added to your experience, maybe a welcome cake or a welcome drink in your room that you were not expecting, and acknowledging your presence, things like those. So in our industry, in the outsourcing industry, there are many such things where a client engages you for a certain objective, but you go beyond that objective. You showcase your capability in many other areas of strength and make it a flourishing, engaging partnership over the years. So I'll pause and pass it on to any of my other panelists.
Thank you, Ashish. Interesting perspective, by the way.
Yeah, nicely put, Ashish. So I'll go next. So I represent Sagility, which is a tech-enabled pure play healthcare services and solutions company, right? So Ashish spoke about customer experience, and I thought I'll maybe focus more on how domain expertise can play a difference, right? So specifically what I see is that for a BPM to be successful, obviously their client needs to be successful. And obviously the client competes in their market on, could be on price, could be on quality, could be on, service like what Ashish spoke about. So their differentiator could be anything in the market. And it's important for the BPM to understand what that is and how they can truly partner with the client. We live in a world where the competitor for our client is not necessarily from the same industry, right? So if you look at healthcare, I'm sure most health insurance companies must be worried about what Amazon can do in a healthcare payer industry, right? So the competition can come from anywhere. Now, how can a BPM partner really understand the business so well and be able to deliver reliably, consistently, be it on the people side, process side, as well as in the technology side, to ensure that, their client is ahead of what's happening in the market, and that way can be a true partner.
Great points, Ashish. And I'll try and add a third dimension to this, right? So we can kind of think of it from a full circle standpoint. So I work with clients all the time, right? Being here in the US gives me the opportunity to actually sit in front of clients, understand what they're trying to do, how they're trying to build their, forward-looking strategies, etc. The one thing that constantly I remind myself, and I think is applicable to this industry, is that no two brands are the same, which essentially means that you cannot come with the same set of solutions, the same boilerplate kind of an approach for everybody. Right? Each one is on their own journey, and you've got to treat them on their merits of the case, right? So as a BPM provider, you've got to really understand what are they really trying to do, how are they trying to do it, what is the journey that they've chosen to be on, and how can you complement and support them, right? Now that really means a few things, right? One, like you said, right, as a provider, you need to build trust, right? You absolutely have to have trust at the end of the day, because otherwise they're not giving you a seat at the table. The second thing, Ashish, that you called it very nicely is how do you delight, right? It's a fiercely competitive space, as we all know, but that dimension then comes to light. But two other things that I also think are important is what kind of a skin in the game are you willing to put in? Are you willing to ride the wave with your customer, right, as a trusted advisor? And then finally, as a partner, are you in tune with the times? Right? There's so much that's happening out there. how much are you able to actually sit and tell your customer, educate them in the process, and then move forward? But to me, those are the dimensions that I think also constitute a good point of view there.
So I think, Prashant, you brought some of the interesting perspectives around trust, delight, right? How do you ensure that customers' trust is there and customers delighted with the entire experience? The example which you gave, Ashish, from hospitality also talks about the delighting customers, right? So would love to know from each one of you or few of you, what are some of the areas, or how do you measure value you deliver to your stakeholders? Are there some metrics which you use to demonstrate the impact you're creating out of your work?
I can go first, right? And again, we're in an industry where I say this, right? The faster, better, cheaper will never go out of fashion, right? I actually call it the digital Olympics, right? You're always striving to get better and incrementally improve and so on and so forth. I think that will always be the case. But if I also think about how you measure that, right, there are a lot of dimensions and you continue to explore, right? You have SLAs, KPIs, you talk of CSAT, you talk of effort, turnaround time, quality, etc., etc. I think in general, what I'm seeing is that you're having a lot of the customer facing or the front end kind of measures of success, and then you have the back end side of the measures of success. They'll always be there. I think they become very important because they help you really get to what I call as a voice of the process. You really understand the health of the process. Right? I also think increasingly we are moving towards measuring things that make it important to see how effective is your process, which means you're looking now at measures like customer effort. Right? How much of an effort does a customer have to put in to get his or her issue resolved? Right? You're also looking at containment, right? Is the customer able to self-serve? What kind of digital enablement are you giving him? How much of power goes into the customer's hands versus has to be residing with an agent and so on, right? So those are some of the metrics that I'm seeing start to play out. You'll always have the good ones that have been time and tested, but increasingly we're moving towards these newer ways of evaluating process effectiveness.
Well put, Prashant. Yeah. So in an ideal world, I would say, measure everybody on the true outcome, right? So, for instance, when we buy services from Amazon or Microsoft, we pay per transaction or per token or whatever else that we buy. In an ideal world, if you look at from a customer point of view, they would like to pay, per customer or per transaction or whatever it is. But many a times the challenge is, if it's a cost per customer, it ends up being I would say a fairly lag metric, right? By the time it's weeks, months down the line. The systems are not necessarily in place, that can actually truly measure that outcome in most of the scenarios. And the third one is obviously how much of that is the responsibility of the service provider itself, right? So it's tough to peg everything that, the cost per customer has gone up and it's all because of the service provider. So that's the challenge, most of the client space in trying to move to a completely outcome based. Prashant did speak about some of the interim stuff or alternate ways to measure, which are getting again to outcome, but not, I would say, the end state. So I think the industry is evolving, like I said, because of, system constraints, because of even processes in place to be able to measure it. I think we are still not there, but I would say, that's where we see the trend of industry heading towards. And that's also an opportunity for some of the BPMs to go ahead and differentiate themselves using that as a play. Of course, besides that, we talk about cost takeout, we talk about increase in sales, we talk about better customer experience. There could be a lot of direct dollars that you can measure and commit as part of a transformation journey to your clients. But I would say at some point of time, the expectation might be to, in a way, take a share of the risk of the business itself by becoming truly outcome based, what I would think.
Thank you. So moving on to next part of the discussion, wanted to understand your thoughts in terms of how the entire BPM strategy is can be aligned with larger organization strategies. Have you seen any examples of successful implementation, and would love to hear your thoughts in terms of how different organizations or how the entire BPM strategy gets aligned with the larger organization strategy, creating much more impact for the customers and for all the stakeholders involved.
I'd like to answer that. So let's just widen the discussion here that, let's see some other examples of outsourcing and value impact. So even before the services started getting outsourced, something that we had witnessed in last maybe 5 or 6 decades or even more, manufacturing actually first got outsourced before the services sector got outsourced. A lot of popular brands that we make use of or purchase on a day-to-day basis do not manufacture their own products themselves. They have the partners. A very popular phone brand is designed by X, but manufactured by Y. And while this was an example of the manufacturing industry, in the services sector, it's only in last 2 or 3 decades when the services started getting outsourced. Now, service sector is a very subjective area to begin with. While there are a lot of measurement systems in place that have truly evolved in last decade or so, customer sentiment is something which now organizations are trying to capture. What used to be a top 2 box CSAT approach that evolved into NPS has truly evolved into a sentiment analysis. And if you talk to the CEOs of many large enterprises, they will always say that one thing that does not allow them to sleep well in the night is, are they losing their customer base despite building a superior product, despite providing in their own wisdom, an excellent customer service environment to their customers, and yet they lose out their customer base, perhaps to a competition or to something else that has disrupted their market. To make use of certain examples, I think all of us at some stage in our lives may have purchased a printer for our home needs, right? Now, it may sound very, very obvious that, a printer is a very simple device. You buy it off the shelf, bring it home, and that's where the struggle starts. Most of us, almost 9 out of 10 customers who purchase a printer find it difficult to install it without reading the manual or without going through, the website, etc., etc. And it may sound, a very trivial example sometimes, but those are the experiences that the printer companies have to provide to their potential customers, that when they buy the product, they don't have to call that, how do I install the damn thing, right? It's like saying you buy a car and you call back Toyota to say, how does this work, right? And I'm making use of fast-moving consumer goods industry as an example, and not really an automobile industry. And that's where I think the first moment of truth for the organizations occur, that you've sold a product, your sales are really great, but your customers are constantly calling you back how to make use of that product. And hence, customer awareness, customer education about the product is of paramount importance. And in our long history that AGS has enabled the partners, we've helped many of our clients in this particular segment or a sector where we have given them the tools that allow the customers for self-help, self-education, how to maximize the usage of a product and be delighted right after the purchase. Thank you, Amita.
Thank you, Ashish. Any other perspective from anyone?
Amita, one other example, and I'm going to borrow from Ashish's industry, actually, the way he came from in terms of hospitality, right? The very definition of travel and hospitality industry is all about making experiences very personalized and welcoming, right? That's the delighter there, right? And if you think about how that is accomplished, right, in the customer service kind of a setup, which is industry that I come from now, it's very important for for you to feel that experience right from the time you do a call, right? So to Ashish's point, you have multiple moments of truth where you get to experience this, right? One of the first ones is when you make things like bookings. That you call an agent or you call a customer service representative and saying, hey, I need to make a reservation at such and such place, at such and such property, such and such dates, and so on and so forth. The traditional challenge for that part of the solution or the service has been language, right? When I say language, right? How many, you can provide a lot of regional languages, right? But if you look at how the industry has evolved, the way you met with language needs are you either staff with different multilingual resources or capable, sometimes bilingual, sometimes trilingual, sometimes by language. You've evolved a little more. You've got solutions where you have an interpretation option with the human in the process. So there's a two-way interpretation that happens. But now what we're seeing is with AI and technology coming in, you can actually use real-time knowledge language translation, right? Which is what my backdrop on the Zoom screen says, right? What we've been able to do is with a hospitality chain, we've deployed that. We are actually able to provide customer service in the language of the customer, right? And you can choose from over 100 different languages. So language as a friction point in a customer experience is completely eliminated. The reason I bring this example is, one, we've always had these kind of traditional challenges, right? And one of the biggest accomplishments, I think, of the BPM industry is its ability to adopt, right? The way we think of BPM way back in the 90s to the early 2010s to where we are today is significantly evolved. And these examples kind of give you assurance and confidence that when you bring process, people, technology, and data together, you can actually eliminate a lot of the friction points that you assumed you couldn't address before.
Right. So I think all of these boils down to creating a better customer experience, ensuring that your customer is not only satisfied but delighted with whatever you're doing, right? So tell us what are some of the avenues to achieve that customer excellence, and how do you basically measure the entire impact in terms of your initiatives are driving? Also, would be good to hear your thoughts on how the customer feedback plays an important role in designing those customer offerings or designing those value proposition which creates a lasting experience and impact for the customer.
Should I go for?
Sure.
Okay, yeah. So the first point that you spoke about, Amita, the important stuff is to know who is your customer, right? So it's important to first segment the customers itself. I mean, I can talk about the healthcare example, and there you got people who are over 70 who prefer, to call a customer service, right? Whereas you got customers who prefer not to call at all. So their preference is give me the answer, give me proactive communication. Have a good enough portal, and I should be able to find out, or your app should be good enough for them to find an answer. So the first one is to know who the customers are and what their expectations are, and that determines the strategy too for the BPM. So if I'm the BPM provider for a payer, I need to work on everything from maybe a portal, maybe an app to help or do self-serve, or have best-in-class contact center to be able to service to the needs of some of the customers who have those maybe complex queries or who prefer calling it, right? I think that's an important one. The feedback that you spoke about, emanates largely from analytics, right? So one of the panelists also spoke about how do we actually use data better to be able to understand what is happening in the conversation or what is spoken about in the conversations. And you can do sentiment analysis, you can find out broken processes, and all that requires actually putting data together. In this case, some could be structured, some could be unstructured. But how do you bring all these data together to actually redefine or re-engineer the process, right? I think that's a critical element to make it successful.
Any other perspectives from anyone?
I think Ram captured almost in its entirety, but there are a couple of other different things that I'd like to pitch here. For any enterprise to have a very positive customer feedback or sentiment analysis. And we spoke about how the measurement systems have changed with top 2 boxes of CSAT to NPS to sentiment analysis now. It's extremely important for any enterprise to take care of the blind zones in their customer experience, end-to-end track. A lot of tools are now enabling customers to do things themselves, but it's extremely important that if I am a provider, I have experienced those tools extensively before I give it in the hands of the customers. A lot of times, self-help tools or the mobile apps could get very, very, very frustrating for our customers, right? And there are only as many apps an individual would download on their gadgets as they can, with wide variety of products or services that the customers today are using. You could have few apps, but not everything on your mobile phone. So tools are great enablers, but it's extremely important that the tools are designed effectively so that minimum time is spent by the customer on their apps. I always make use of this analogy, and I will still use it again, although again from a very different industry. I once asked a senior banking executive based out of India that in the last 15, 20 years, online banking has tremendously grown, for the reasons for which one had to go to a branch and, spend half a day or a couple of hours at the branch of the bank, can be done yourself on your online portal or even the banking mobile app. So the question I had was, with all these advancements, do you have fewer branches today of your bank, or do you have greater number of branches of your bank? And in comes a very wise answer. We have more branches today despite online banking. And then my next obvious question that anybody would ask is, why does that happen? And a very profound statement: the world's population, and definitely India's population, is not a stagnant number, right? So, and this is a phenomenon that has truly changed in the last 15, 20 years, right? There was no online banking until the end of 90s or the previous century, but start of this century, online banking truly has taken a great form. And yet every bank, there is a new society that gets built up, clamors to get some real estate out there. So it has to be supplemented. And that's why I said right at the beginning, take care of the blind zones, because there must be something an enterprise is missing, which is still forcing customers to go to a bank branch. I hope that helps, that analogy.
Yes, very, very interesting perspective, Ashish. I think you also brought the discussion to a different angle, and I'll shift the conversation a little. Right, the entire business environment is changing with the entire, and I'll not talk about AI at this point of time, but with the entire technology advancement happening, and the entire business environment is changing. The companies need to adapt to the current times, right? And one of the key, or two key elements to the entire transition is your continuous improvement and innovation. Tell us how organizations can strive for these two, building the entire culture of innovation and continuous improvement, which could actually help them to be continue to be the leader in whatever they're doing in the changing business environment.
I think the whole mindset is where it all starts, right? So at the heart of any change lies the intent, right? And I always say this because you could do multiple spreadsheets of analysis, you could do multiple presentations, you can develop multiple points of view, but at the end of the day, if you're not convinced, if your heart is not in it, you cannot have that innovation mindset, right? With that said, I think culture therefore becomes very, very important, right? And how you develop, drive change is equally important. I think the other thing that we've noticed is that in organizations where innovation and continuous improvement is successful, You established not just culture, but you established a support ecosystem. What do I mean by that? Innovation and continuous improvement, as they say, takes a village to deliver them, right? It's not just one person, one team, one individual coming together doing it, right? You need different parts of the organization to come together. There's a lot of change involved. Right? Therefore, I think the other very successful element is how do you set up organizations for success by bringing in those cross-functional teams that are empowered and are having enough talent within them in terms of across the different business functions that they represent to be able to move the strategy forward. The last element that I will bring up is, I was reading this somewhere, right? Especially with technology advancements that you're bringing out, right? Because I think organizations are stuck between jumping in too early or staying out too late, right? So there's that catch-22 situation. And I think that it's important to think of that situation and then say, hey, how do I do controlled pilots? How do I create incubation opportunities where I can pilot something, see how it works, mature it before I can take it to scale? So those are some of the things that at least I've seen as means and ways in which organizations are able to bring that innovation and continuous improvement to bear.
Sure, if I can just add one more point here, and then of course, Ram, thank you. We'll hear from Ram. Of course, data is very powerful today, and the way data gets crunched now is incredible levels of sophistication that has come into every business enterprise, and without data is unimaginable to run an effective organization. Almost all senior executives across the board in any industry, data, there's tremendous investment in terms of tools, technologies, resources, and the time that company executives spend in number crunching and draw their conclusions. That's perhaps the most important thing, that analytics serves a purpose, and that purpose is it's giving you a recommendation that you can take and implement changes in your business environment, not to neglect or sacrifice the highest degree of common sense that any business executive has, that you make use of data and yet continue to steer the organization in a direction where you want your organization to evolve into. So besides data and analytics, which I think BPM organizations, we are both accomplished lot as well as the guilty lot, in the sense that we generate too much stats, right? Our business, the nature of our business is such, it generates a whole lot of stats. I'm assuming we are addressing a wide audience base amongst the Indians. The kind of stats that you see in the game of cricket, you do not see those stats in a game of football, right? And that's truly the difference of BPM vis-a-vis any other industry. Numbers are all around us in every form and fashion that one can think of. And hence, if I look at the degree of sophistication of BPM industry, it's truly enabled our industry, to another level of data crunching, which even the core businesses, FMCG, automobile, travel and hospitality, etc., may not make use of. In fact, Prashant and Ram both would agree with me. The kind of data that we share with our client base sometimes takes them by surprise. And that also adds, that surprise element also adds to the value impact that we create for our client enterprises. Over to you, Ram.
Yeah, just one little nugget I will just share. Our business excellence team recently, I mean, of course, all companies must be having something like an all ideas matter, or any way to keep collecting ideas for continuous improvement. But what I found interesting was they kind of started something about asking people to tell about the problem that they face. It's I would say more a psychological stuff where people are happy to share problems and not necessarily tell solutions. And then that team picks up those problems and solves for it. I thought it was a nice way to get more ideas or more problems for them to be solved.
Excellent perspective, Ram. I think this also brings us to very, very important and crucial element of this discussion is the technology advancement, right? Uh, and with the entire advent of AI, Gen AI coming in, uh, the entire technology landscape is changing, right? So, what are some of the latest technology advancements in the industry that are driving value, impact, and also some of the opportunities for the BPM industry? So, would love to hear perspectives from all of you on this, how the entire AI ML integration, uh, what are some of the new technologies you're seeing that is driving value and impact and creates opportunities as well.
Can I go first?
Any one of you.
Okay. Yeah, no, the obvious expectation from people will be that we talk about Gen AI right off, right? Because that's what is garnering news everywhere. But before that, I just thought I'll just set some context too, right? So the reason, the reality is there is still some work to be done, even on the data side, right? So we have a scenario where not all data is structured. You got data in multiple systems, specifically in healthcare where we play in. We also have a huge amount of fraud, waste, and abuse, and that way there is, just too much of data that needs to be first aggregated before we can do any bit of AI and ML, right? So that's the reality. Gen AI certainly started helping in many of these areas. So, I won't kind of discount that, including in creating synthetic data, test data, and all that stuff. So there have been huge amount of advancements that LLMs can be used for. Even when it comes to unstructured data, we got, doctor's prescription, you got medical records, you got scans. At one point of time, it was almost impossible to kind of connect all that. But now again, with advancements in technology, with multi-modular models, all kinds of stuff that's going on, we are even able to now be able to bring all these together. I mean, it's still early stages to necessarily get the full impact of it. But the reality is we are seeing the change and it's happening really fast. The biggest advancement I see on the technology side is the cost of technology itself, right? So I think in the last year, even for the models that we've been using, I think the cost has come down to almost 1/50th of what we paid even a year back, right? So that's making it affordable and making it real now to be able to solve business problems. So that's one bit on Gen AI and the impact of AI. The other area I can touch on related to this is even to do with even process mining, right? What we generally see when we talk about a claims process is the happy part to say a claim comes in, somebody checks eligibility, somebody does that and pays off the money, right? But if you actually use technology there to identify the problem, you will discover that there are hundreds of processes and many of it are in loops. Many of these are actually not addressing the customer pain point, and it has a negative impact on the customer experience, penalties, and all kinds of stuff, right? So there is huge savings that can be got by using technology right, by using solutions like that. The other area that I see fair bit of interest is this whole area of low code automation itself. All of us would have seen cartoons about the requirements in one form and what gets developed by a software engineer being something very different, right? We still not there completely where the development can be done by the business user, but I think we're getting close. So now with all these low code automation platform, a large chunk of the problem can be done by the business user or somebody who knows the business well. And that way, the speed of automation and the dependency on the software team is decreasing significantly. So, and one other point I'll just like to mention about is on the whole contact center side, right? So earlier, you get a call, there was no solution that could do seamlessly in real time, what's happening in the call well, to be able to summarize the call, should be able to give the agent the next best action they need to do. There have been solutions there, but like I said, not necessarily cost effective, not necessarily accurate. And again, this one area we're seeing a sea change now in technology having evolved and can make a significant impact going forward in the future on the entire contact center business itself.
Thank you, Ram. Any other perspective, Prashant?
So I think Ram makes one fantastic point, right? Which is that your cost of technology is coming down, right? Now, if you complement that with the fact that as technology also matures, right, your adoption increases, right? So I think what's happening today is a dual phenomenon in my view, right? Which is cost coming down, adoption or maturity increasing, right? Therefore, what you have as choices are, one, there's a lot of availability, right? It's also a lot of affordability in the process. Uh, but what it also brings on is a question on where and when and how do you want to do it, right? Because that's the other key element in this, right? It's good to have plenty to pick from. It's good to have it to be a very positive ROI. But then where do I want to put it? How do you balance the element of human element and technology coming in? Where is the right equation coming in, right? And I think a lot of it is obviously situational, circumstantial, etc., right? But the point that I think technology has put us at here today, as we speak about all of these things, is that you're now able to, again, not just have the choice, but you're also able to um, bring the elements of labor intensive, non value added kind of a element into the spectrum of using technology and then using the human element on top of it, right? Which is where I think there's a lot of evolution that will continue to happen, right? To something that Ashish was saying earlier, right? And to what Ram is saying, uh, one of the execs that I was talking to in my customer organization actually said this, right? He said, we are in a very data rich environment, right? But we're intellectually poor, right? Because there's so much of stuff available around you, right? Um, but as I see about all of this, right, I think increasingly we'll move away from having more and more reactive way of using technology to more real-time and proactive way of using technology. Contact centers, back office, emails, examples around claims, right? There's so much of real-time stuff that you're able to push through. And that's where I think Gen AI has a big push, obviously, that's coming through.
So I think, Prashant, you touched upon very, very interesting real-time use of technology, right? But the question is, what are some of the challenges organizations face or the industry face when creating a value-driven proposition or creating an offering which is more customer-focused, right? How these challenges can be addressed? Any thoughts on this from anyone? Ashish, if you would like to go.
Sure, sure. No, that's a great question. And I think a very common endeavor that any BPM or a service provider would have is to bring creative solutions to their customer base. And everything that we spoke about, it is enabled by data, technology, processes, must have some kind of a buy-in for the senior executives of your client enterprise or fulfill one of the key objectives of that enterprise. But to answer your question, one of the key challenges is, and I think Prashant, if I'm not mistaken, did allude to something like it takes a village. When you're working on a solution, it's not a one person or a few individuals who create a solution. It takes a village because you're now looking at every possible aspects of that creative solution. And hence multiple touch points, multiple minds, multiple opinions, all of that then kind of generates a solution, which could still be a very simple solution, but must have the handoff from one to the other. And in a very dynamic environment, a lot of time actually goes into preparing a solution sometimes. So speed is of essence that you are delivering a solution just at the time when an enterprise is looking to buy it or maybe deploy it. A lot of times it happens that you come up with a solution which is fantastic, but it's only 1 year behind the market reality because some others have already deployed it in a big way. So your timing of all the creative solutions sometimes is of paramount importance than the solution itself. I think Ram also mentioned, or whether ahead of time or really delayed. That was exactly the point that he was making. That there are few solutions that have come really ahead of time, and it's only a matter of time now that how the deployment and the execution of those solutions would make the difference. Uh, all the new technologies that have come in, and why only the BPM sector across the board. There is a big technology revolution at our doorsteps, and how we use it, deploy it to make it very, very meaningful. I think it's a matter of few more years before it is widely utilized. Anything that a chartered accountant does can be done, by machines today. And yet the deployment could be faulty and the solution could be misleading in some of the other ways. Hence, Prashant spoke about being intellectually poor, although we have every data at our disposal today. It's extremely important that these solutions are created very, very carefully, meticulously, and it should lead to a larger purpose of an organization's enterprise.
Great, Ashish. Any other perspectives from anyone?
I'll just say this, right? And I'm a guy who loves to quote quotes, right? So, there's a saying that says that I think some respond when they see the light, others when they feel the heat. Right. I think something that's really very powerful for me is because that's where technology is really, right? What are you trying to react to, right? Are you trying to propel yourself forward, which is the light angle, or are you overcoming a challenge, right? But at the end of it all, I think if you think of technology and the role it'll play and how organizations can be prepared, especially real time, etc., right? You're getting closer and closer to the moment of truth. I think the three guardrails that in general are seeming to emerge from all of this is: one, can technology be made harmless? Let it do no harm regardless of where I use it. Right? Second is, can it be honest? Can it give the right answers, the right places, right insights, etc.? The third one is it helpful? Right. So as long as those three are kept in mind, I think decisions get a little more easier to make. But again, right, you still have to overcome the other aspects of: are you ready to do it? Are you ready to take the leap? How early is it? Is it mature enough? Am I willing to take that risk, etc.? But at least those seem to be the emerging trends that I'm seeing.
Right. So we'll move towards light, Prashant, and I would love to hear your perspectives in terms of what are some of the future trends, some of the newer revenue models, etc., emerging in the BPM industry, and any suggestions, tips in terms of how organizations can prepare themselves for these trends to stay ahead of the competition. Would love to hear perspective and would, if time allows, from all of you.
I think at least the way I've looked at as a BPM provider, right, looking at the market, etc. To me, there are, broadly speaking, right, there are two sets of customers out there for you, right? The large ones who like to have a multi-vendor setup, like to have more control, right, like to have more centralization, if you will, of how they bring in transformation, continuous improvement, right, and so on and so forth. And then these smaller providers who tend to say, hey, I'm not in the business of doing this. Can you take care of all of it, right? And we'll continue to operate in these two broad. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of stuff in between, but broadly, if you think about it, right? So, to me, the way you think about it, and Ram alluded to this beautifully, right, is what kind of outcomes are you willing to provide, right? A lot of it depends on that. But again, for you to deliver outcomes, you need control, right? So it's all about saying, how do you drive the balance between, I am willing to sign up for this outcome if you allow me to do this, right? And it all again comes down to that value equation, right? When we talk of value proposition, what is the definition of providing value to brand A, which will be different from brand B, it will be different from brand B, right? So if you know your customer, if you know your customer's customer really well, and then if you're able to articulate this message, then I think the models and how BPMs will be able to deliver that value will emerge through that process.
Thanks, Prashant. Ashish, any thoughts on the same?
Yeah, no, I think Prashant spoke beautifully about the question, and nothing new to offer. And that endorses to the point that he made, that no solution. It's not a cookie cutter approach, right? When we talk of value proposition, what is a value to one enterprise may not be of any value to the other enterprise, and hence it's extremely important as the first step that you determine what is that your client enterprise is looking for, what is more meaningful, and what does that company is striving for. And I think once you have attained, then you have to really reverse engineer and work backwards towards building a solution around that large goal, instead of building the solution and trying to sell it to someone who's just not interested in your solution. And hence that realization, or the scoping of the solution itself is of paramount importance. That is actually the biggest pitfall for a lot of companies also, that they have built a solution which nobody is buying, but by the way, it's a brilliant solution. And hence, it's extremely important that the feasibility study of a solution is done very extensively. You know your market, you know what will appeal to them. And in the services sector, no one solution equals to, is of equal importance to every enterprise. It has to be customizable. That will make it appealing for a particular brand vis-a-vis brand B.
If we can just, I'll maybe keep it short, because I do see some questions popping up. But broadly, if I can summarize, one, I think specialized services is the partner that companies will look for. And by that, I mean somebody, we spoke about domain expertise, somebody who specializes in horizontal, vertical, whichever way, I think can make a huge difference. Second one is how we partner with clients to become more and more outcome based. We did touch on that also earlier. The third area I would say is on the whole tech aspect, the tech interventions. How do we use AI, ML, hyper automation, cloud, all cutting edge, leading edge technology to make a difference to the business impact, right? So I think these things will make a big difference. Besides, of course, what can be done on the process side, be it re-engineering a process or eliminating a process. So so that I think broadly is my thought on where we see the future heading.
Excellent takes from each one of you. And before we conclude, would love to take at least few questions from the audience. So if you allow, I'll just read the questions, and there are a lot of questions which we have received. So there's a question: given the increasing complexity of business operations, how can BPM service providers effectively balance the need for automation and process efficiency with the importance of human judgment and decision making? Any of you would like to take it?
That's something that we briefly touched upon, that never rule out the possibilities of a good gut feeling. With all the data at our disposal and with all the analytics that is being served, it has to lead to a very fruitful conclusion. And that conclusion could be your starting point to make an investment in your organization or allocation of funds to build a solution. And yet it has to be backed by all the possible, faculties of humankind to be in play, that before you make use of the data and the analytics, you exactly know what it does, what it is leading into. And that's extremely important. And that's where the differentiation comes in of enterprise A versus enterprise B, because a lot of these solutions, again, could be very common to every industry, So how you capitalize on, and the judgment and steering your organization in that direction, of course, has to be backed by data. But then that absolutely needs and can never be replaced. Something which we all call a very, very sound leadership, that is required to make use of the data.
Yeah, another thank you, Ashish. Another very, very interesting and specific question is, what do you see future in terms of technology advancements that can happen in document scanning and reading? Any thoughts from anyone in terms of how the document scanning, reading is
Yeah,
going to
yeah,
look like in the future?
yeah. Again, this is again not a new problem, right? It's been on for a number of years, and you see the quality of OCRs improving leaps and bounds, being able to read everything from handwritten stuff, not necessarily solve the problem completely, but I'm saying we've seen a huge amount of improvement on technology on all those areas. Now, uh, you introduce AI ML into that whole part, right? On document classification itself next. So, what are we trying to do with the documents is the problem that most of us are working on or are solving today, right? So it's about you got the document, you've scanned, what do you do next with it? So do you want to use that extracted input to automate? Do you need to synthesize something from there, summarize it, and then do the automation? Do we need to use that for triaging or indexing? So there are different business problems, and not all of it is necessarily straightforward. A word of caution on this whole designing for hyper automation is that sometimes, I mean, we all do it all the time to drive cost efficiencies because we don't want necessarily so many people sitting and doing it. But we also should be conscious that even a cost of one error can pull down the millions that we're saving, right? So, it's important to design right. I do see some questions on human in the loop. So it's important when you kind of design for automation, how do you ensure that you have the right checks and balances in place? Because the cost of an error can wipe off every benefit that otherwise we were trying to get, right? So that's a word of caution in this area.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Ram. Another interesting question is, what steps are being taken to mitigate risk on data security and privacy? I think this is another topic for discussion, but would
Yeah.
love to hear perspective.
I can. Yeah. So just quickly, right? So one is you got typical industry certifications itself, right? To take care of what needs to be done regarding data security and compliance. Now, I don't think anybody is cloud averse now, right? So every one of our clients are open to move data to the cloud. So in a way, it's no longer those historic days where nothing leaves the data center and everybody just accesses the data, views it through Citrix and other things in their farm, right? So the question is relevant here because now obviously the data security question becomes relevant because now data is sitting in the BPM's contact center where we are using it to build models or do analysis and hence something that all of us are working on. So yeah, like I said, one is getting these certifications done, getting your processes right, ensure there are checks and balances. In case of healthcare, what is PHI information, what information need to be masked when you keep it in the data center. So there is a fair bit of work that needs to be done in designing how you're using your data warehouse and what data gets extracted, stored, deleted. So there should be a policy and a process for everything. Yeah.
Thank
If
you,
I can
Ram.
just add one more dimension to what Ram spoke about, and this is a matter, which not only is confounding the industry or every organization, but also the legal system of a country. The countries and whichever part of the world you travel to, and if you happen to meet the lawmakers, this is one puzzle that they are yet to solve constitutionally. So how do you make new laws and policies in your nation that protects the data? And a whole lot of work has been done. The research has been done by various countries. Some are leading the pack in many ways in ensuring that not only today but the future as well, some of these laws and maybe if it's a criminal code or a civil code, whatever that may apply, is something that has a bite, and is effective in controlling the breach of data. So it's a whole lot of work and a parallel industry evolving in that direction, where the lawmakers, the judiciary system, everybody is kind of aligning to how the data can be protected.
Thank you, Ashish. So just last question for the day. Apart from AI, how are BPM service providers effectively differentiating themselves in a crowded marketplace? I think that there were two questions on the similar line. What strategies do you suggest to position organizations as unique and valuable partners to their clients?
Sorry, say that again, Amita.
So the question is, on differentiation, how do you differentiate yourself in a crowded market? Are there some strategies, tips in terms of how organizations can differentiate and create more unique value propositions for their customers?
Sure. I think all of us can take turns here and speak about the subject. It's just all about how you want to position yourself in the market space. You want to be positioned as a specialist, which I'm sure Ram will not do, that they're truly be a specialist, or you want to be a generalist, that you're good at everything. You're not a specialist, but you can try your hands on every possible sector or a vertical backed by technology. And that's where the differentiation also comes in, that what are the set of clients or enterprises that you would love to work with? And those become your target market. This is where you channelize your sales engines to acquire some of those businesses and create a COE or a capability that caters exactly to what your strengths are.
Sure.
Amita,
Any
also-
other perspective? Yes.
Sorry, just going to say that I think some areas outside of technology that still continue to be of interest to customers, right? Again, if you're a seasoned outsourcer versus a fresh, again, perspectives change. But I'm also seeing the role of things like impact sourcing, right? As a big area of interest again, right? Some are moving in that direction. Some are saying, okay, we're going to watch it, but that's one area of interest. The other thing that I think from a differentiation standpoint is becoming increasingly relevant is as brands and customers become truly global, right? How are you able to set up operations or run processes for them in a global model, leveraging best practices from one geography to the other, and so on and so forth, right? Especially when you're thinking of these large-scale customers who are expanding, and there are plenty of them who do these models. They're very, very important. They're very focused on that, right? And then the third dimension, of course, which is something that is a lot said and a lot to be done, is diversity and inclusion. DEI is a big initiative, right? I know of customers who are actually saying, tell me what percentage of your team's headcount has a DEI factor. Again, to Ashish's point that you were saying earlier, there's a lot of stats that come in, but this is one of those very important stats that customers are looking for as they think of their differentiation strategy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, companies can differentiate right from cost arbitrage, be a low cost player to become a complete digital transformation player, right? So you've got the whole spectrum, and each company can decide where they want to play, and then the market is fairly big. There's enough and more, for everybody to do at this point of time. Of course, if you're just a cost arbitrage player, you also need to be conscious that something like a transformation can wipe out the entire business itself. So you just need to be conscious and aware of those things. So in a way, you can't ignore the technology impact that's going to come in. But like I said, can differentiate on that. You can differentiate as being a reliable partner. We can differentiate as being compliant. Some of that could be table stakes. Some of that could even be a differentiator.
Thank you, Ram. And here we conclude our discussion for today. Thank you all for joining today's session. A special thanks to all our panelists. Thanks for sharing your expertise and invaluable insights. Your thoughts, contributions made this session very, very impactful for our audience. To our audience, we appreciate your active participation and thoughtful questions. We hope you're leaving with actionable strategies to enhance your BPM offerings. Let's continue to stay connected, and please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions or feedback you might have. Thank you once again. Thank you. Have a good day ahead.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
Thank
nasscom.
you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.